Divine Space Gods 2 Revolution for Dummies. Chapter 1. Keila Eisenstein takes control over Eden and somehow manages to fake her own death. 1.1 Regrets, Mind Control Technology, and a Spacebook Addiction. Keila Eisenstein got back up from the floor where she had been for a while, with some bad seizures. The seizures happened every now and then, and Keila had visited a medical professional about them. Unfortunately, the medicine that stopped the seizures also stopped her divine visions, and she didn't want to be without them. So she had simply had to settle with some uncontrollable shaking every now and then. Keila looked at the dead bodies of Joshua and Abraham. Had she killed them? And if she did, why would she do such a thing? Considering that she was the only one in the room, and she indeed was holding a smoking gun, she concluded that she must have been the killer. But why would she do that? With killing Abraham, the answer was obvious. He was the villainous tyrant that she had come to Eden to stop and usurp power from. But why kill Joshua? Although he was annoying, clingy, and a lousy lover, it seemed like a rash and crazy act to kill him. But then Keila suddenly remembered. An evil alien space demon called Rangda had commanded her to kill her lover in an authoritarian vision. Under such circumstances, the only sane thing to do was to oblige, as it seemed unwise to argue with the evil alien. With that matter resolved, Keila moved on to a more important topic. How would she take control over Eden, so she could resume her pointless rebellion against the Terran Council and her nemesis, Bjorn Muller? Killing the head honcho of the asteroid world Eden was a good start, but Keila knew from experience that killing the head honcho didn't make her the new boss by default. Keila had killed the leader of the Terran Council previously, before arriving on Eden. And instead of becoming the leader over Earth, they had been chasing her and trying to kill her for 4 years straight. Talk about holding a grudge. Finally, Keila came up with a foolproof plan. She would use the particle replicator, which was conveniently placed in the room she was in, to make a copy of the alien mind control chip that Abraham had used to control the minds of the Edenites. If Abraham could do it, she could do it too. Keila activated the particle replicator to make the God chip, which stands for Great Oppressor Desperado, and the display showed that it would take 2 hours for the microchip to be completed. How unlucky was that? What if someone were to swing by in that long period of time? Keila concluded that wasn't very likely. Abraham was a dickhead, and his employees probably stayed as far away from him as possible whenever they could. Keila considered spending the 2 hours doing something useful, like reading the completely necessary operations manual that came with the mind control technology. But she decided against it. Her phone had been dead for days, and she was dying to know what had happened in her favorite TV show, The Wealthy Wives of Warner Brothers, in the last few days. She logged in to Facebook to post a status update when she saw something interesting. Her all-time nemesis, Bjorn Muller, had also updated his status. Bjorn wrote, "Drinking whiskey by the space couch with some sexy hot-looking drones." This caused Keila to have a fit of jealousy and an epiphany. The reason that Bjorn Muller and the army always seemed to show up where she was, even though she had been trying to avoid him since they broke up, was because he had been following her on social media. In a stroke of genius, Keila deactivated her Facebook account, and in the reasoning for deactivation, she wrote, "User has perished." Ha! That would have fooled them. She then turned on an episode of her favorite TV show, In Abraham's Private Room. But she unknowingly published it to all monitors on the Eden Space Control Station she was at. This alerted Abraham's group of soldiers, the Angels, that something was amiss, as Abraham loathed The Wealthy Wives of Warner Brothers and would never watch it. Keila stood up with a twitch from sitting on the couch when Samuel and the other angels stormed into the room. Samuel and the others raised their guns at her, and Samuel shouted. He said, "Stop! Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Keila responded, "I am Keila Eisenstein from the Martian Humanist Alliance, and I'm watching TV." Samuel said, "Yes, I can see that, but apart from your terrible taste when it comes to TV shows, mind you, you are also trespassing. Where is our Grandmaster Abraham?" Samuel glanced at the corpses of Abraham and Joshua and continued talking. He said, "Gasp! Did you kill our Grandmaster Abraham?" Keila, realizing that the truth might not be popular, decided to lie. She said, "No, I didn't. Joshua over there killed Abraham, and then he killed himself in regret over what he had done." Samuel said, "Okay, so what are you doing here? No woman should ever set foot in this room." Keila chuckles. She said, Oh, I'm the stripper that was ordered for one of the angels' birthday celebration." Samuel said, "You lie. We don't celebrate birthdays around here. We only celebrate Abraham's glory." Metatron, another angel that had never liked Abraham in the first place, decided that it was time to intervene. It wasn't his birthday, but Samuel wouldn't know that. And he wanted to help this pretty and young woman, so it could work. Metatron said, "Come on, Samuel. It is my birthday. We have been mates for 60 years. Abraham is finally gone. Let's celebrate and let me have a lap dance with this pretty lady." Samuel said, "Okay, I wouldn't mind watching either. I'll kill the intruder later. Now, dance, woman." Keila glanced at the particle replicator display that showed the time of creating the god chip as 5 more minutes remaining. As she got up, she realized a flaw in her triple eye. She couldn't dance at all. Besides, she was wounded as she had a bullet in her leg from her previous fight with Abraham's bodyguard, Abaddon. She got up, limping around and dancing terribly while pretending to smirk sweetly amid pain. Fortunately, Keila's had a lustful and sexy body, and despite her poor dancing techniques, she managed to mesmerize the sexually starved angels for long enough for the God mind control chip to be completed. In times of desperation, Keila ran to the particle replicator machine, grabbed the mind control chip, and crammed it into her left ear. Ouch! Unfortunately, she inserted the chip the wrong way, as she had been too hyper to read the manual. So instead of gaining absolute control, the action released a psionic explosion that knocked her and everyone else in the room unconscious. Chapter 1.2. Metatron wakes up and decides to put the disoriented and clueless Keila Eisenstein in charge. A while later, Metatron woke up with a terrible headache, wondering why he had been drinking too much again. Then he opened his eyes and realized that it wasn't hangover he was experiencing, but something far more unique and potentially dangerous. A short circuit in the alien mind control technology that caused a psionic blast and knocked everybody unconscious. Metatron looked around in the room and saw that all his colleagues, as well as the strange, mysterious woman, his future intended boss, Keila, were all unconscious. How lucky that he was to wake up first. Metatron, knowing that she had killed Abraham, and thus gets the rightful ownership of a front-runner, carried Keila to a life support unit, and then he inserted the God chip the correct way to avoid another accidental blast. He then connected her sleeping body and her clueless mind through the Divine detector machine and transported it to a hallucinatory world as a practical joke, so that Keila's initial reaction when she woke up would be that she indeed had died and had gone to heaven. Metatron reiterated his foolproof plan for himself. Number 1, get rid of Abraham. Check. Number 2, correctly insert mind control chip into Keila, the predestined successor. Check. 3, convince the others that Keila was the chosen one, amidst conflicts from other angels pending. And 4, befriend and seduce Keila and make her promote him to a de facto spouse pending. He left Keila's body lying motionless to the Divine detector machine with her head still attached with metal tubes, and went back to laying on the floor pretending to be still unconscious so that he could pretend to wake up the same time as the other angels. An hour later, Samuel and the others woke up. Samuel dazedly said, "Oh, everyone, wake up! What happened? Where is the intruder?" Metatron, pretending to have just woken up, said, "Oh, have you checked if she's connected to the Divine detector machine?" Samuel looked at the detector machine and said, "Yeah, she is. But she must have been knocked unconscious by the blast as well. How did this happen?" Metatron said, "It's unexplainable, right? It must have been Yahweh, our divine will, that made it happen. It must be a sign that we should elevate her to leadership and follow her crazy commands, as we followed Abraham under the order of Yahweh, the divine deity, for all these years." Samuel said, "Yes, it must mean that." Samuel, proclaiming loudly, said, "Fellow angels, we must now follow our new divine prophet, Keila Eisenstein, to do Yahweh's bidding, now that Abraham is dead." Samuel got a soft murmur from the other angels, who were still too confused to understand what was happening. But at least no one could bother arguing. They all headed back to their bed cabins, except for Metatron, who planned to meet with Keila when she wakes up. Chapter 1.3 Metatron seduces and makes Keila Eisenstein an ally. Keila opened her eyes after what felt like a very long dream. Things looked good from her end, as she was greeted by the charming smile of the incredibly sexy Metatron, the handsome and mature-looking angel. Metatron said, "Good morning, Mistress Grandmaster Keila. I am Metatron, at your service." Keila said, "I remember seeing you before the blast. You were the one who left the door to this space station open for me, right?" Metatron said, "Indeed I was. I'm happy that you remember that detail. Did you meet with Yahweh, the God of our people?" Keila said, "I did, and he is none of my concern. I'm a Martian. I'm not an Edenite. On planet Mars, we follow the true Maker, the creator of all beings." Metatron chuckles and he said, "Okay, let's not destroy our potentially mutually beneficial relationship by arguing about religion." Keila smiled and said, "Good point. Anyways, I saw your God Yahweh in the divine dimension. But he didn't say much. He was dead, and he must have been for so long." Metatron said, "Oh no, Abraham must have killed him and lied to us all this time. What is to become of us now?" Keila said, "Not really. I saw Yahweh's suicide letter. He has been dead for a millennium." Metatron said, "Well, that's a fascinating news. But I better go there myself and see with my own eyes. Then again, I'm not allowed to use the machine to go to heaven. Only Abraham was." Keila said, "Well, if you promote me to leadership, I will let you use the machine as much as you want." Metatron said, "Great. I knew I made the right choice when I decided to help you kill Abraham and have you appointed as Grandmaster of Eden." Keila said, "Cool beats. But why would the others agree to make me the leader? And what's in it for you?" Metatron said, "I fooled them that Yahweh chose you and saved your life after the psionic blast occurred, when it is in fact I who saved you. Personally, I would like to be promoted to second in command over Eden. I also have a very long dry spell." Keila said, "I'm happy to promote you to whatever position you want. As for your dry spell, you do realize that I have a bullet in my leg, a bullet in my arm, and a terrible headache from the psionic blast that should have killed me. Metatron said, Yeah, now that you say it, it does ring a bell. Thank you, Grandmaster Keila. I will get you a medical robot to fix your injuries at once. Keila said, Thanks, Metatron. Just call me Keila from now on. Now go have some rest. There are plenty of things for us to do in the days ahead. After Metatron had left the room, Keila smiled to herself. Everything worked out exactly as she had hoped it would. And soon Bjorn Muller and the rest of the Terran Council would feel her wrath as she led Martian people to freedom. As for her feelings for Bjorn and Joshua, they were long gone, and now out came Metatron. He was both handsome and cute at the same time. But having sex with him straight after sustaining life-threatening injuries, people were only that stupid in movies. Keila ordered the medical robot to give her a large dose of morphine and zoned out into a blissful sleep. Chapter 1.4 Bjorn Muller's celebration is interrupted by the skeptics Adel Snyder and Marcus Bauer. Later the same day, Bjorn Muller was having another one-man celebration in his private quarters. His later celebration, a couple of days earlier, ended abruptly when Adel Snyder had told him that Keila managed to escape her spaceship in an escape pod and crashed on Eden just before her ship was destroyed. But this time her death was certain. Her Facebook account was deactivated and the error code that came up was written as user has perished. As Keila was a social media addict, this was a conclusive evidence that she indeed was dead. There was a knock on Bjorn's door, and much to his disdain, it was his right-hand man captain, Adel Snyder, and his chief scientist, Marcus Bauer. Bjorn instantly understood from the serious disapproving looks on their faces that this was another instance of serious disgruntlement. Bjorn sighed and spoke. He said, What is it now, my lovelies? I take it you haven't confirmed the death of Keila for some reason, and you have come here to argue again. Adel Snyder said, Admiral Muller, we cannot confirm someone's death based on them deactivating their social media account. We need hard evidence. You know, like a dead body. Marcus Bauer added in, he said, and we need that body relatively intact so that I can examine whether it's her real body or a dodgy, non-functional clone. Bjorn said, Okay, gentlemen, I will see what I can do. Dismissed. After Marcus Bauer and Adel Snyder had left Bjorn's office, Marcus curiously spoke to Adel. He said, Why did you call him by the wrong title? He is Rear Admiral, not Admiral. Adel said, Did you notice how smoothly that went? Always call Bjorn with a higher title than his real one if you're going to bother him. That will stroke his ego and make him more cooperative. Marcus said, Thank you for the advice. I will keep that in mind. As it turned out, Marcus Bauer did fuck up despite the sound advice that Adel Snyder gave him. But more about that later. Chapter 1.5 A destroyed hologram machine and a deal with the Bjorn Muller. Metatron woke up with a tremor from the relaxing nap he was having. Waking up from the sound of gunfire was never comfortable. And what was worse was that the noise came from his new boss, Mistress Keila's bedroom. Had the Terran Council sent an assassin to kill her? And if they did, what would happen to him and his promotion? Metatron to save her now. Panicking, he started looking for his pistol, but it was neither under his pillow nor on his bedside table. Much to his dismay, Metatron realized that he wasn't American, so he stored his pistol in a safe at the shooting range on the other end of the space station. Under these stressful circumstances, he chose to do what anyone would do. He ran in unarmed, determined to fight the shooter unarmed. Fortunately for Metatron's health, he came out of this foolish choice unscathed. As the shooter was Keila, who for incomprehensible reasons was shooting at the hologram machine. Metatron said, "What are you doing, Keila? Why did you destroy the hologram generator?" Keila said, "My arch-enemy, Bjorn Muller, he was here and now he's gone." "What happened?" Metatron said, "Well, presumably he called on the hologram machine, and instead of pressing the reject call button, you have destroyed the machine instead." "Duh," Keila said. "Oh, I'm sorry. Was it an expensive machine?" Metatron was considering telling Keila that it indeed was a very expensive machine, which she had destroyed for no reason. But Metatron had an aversion towards telling his bosses bad news, so he decided to lie instead. He said, "No, it's okay. We have plenty of hologram machines in stock. They are a dime in a dozen." Keila said, "Good, that's a relief. What do you think Bjorn wanted?" Metatron said, "You're the psychic, Mistress Keila. I suppose the easiest way for me to find out is to use another hologram generator and call him." Keila said, "Good, you call him while I stay out of sight and eavesdrop on your conversation." Metatron stepped up on the hologram machine and started transmitting to Bjorn Muller, who responded promptly. He said, "This is Rear Admiral Bjorn Muller of the Terran Council Interplanetary Security Forces. Who am I speaking to?" Metatron said, "Aye, Captain. I'm Metatron." Bjorn said, "You misheard me. I am Rear Admiral Bjorn Muller of the Terran Council Interplanetary Security Forces." Metatron said, "Ugh, was it necessary to repeat that super-duper, overly long and boring title again? This is not Game of Thrones, and you're not Daenerys." Bjorn said, "What on earth are you talking about? Daenerys? Game of Thrones?" Metatron said, "Daenerys is a sexy character from the show Game of Thrones that was popular in the beginning of the 21st century." Bjorn said, "That is bloody 800 years ago. How the fuck would anyone in their right mind know about that?" Metatron said, "Well, now you do." Bjorn said, "What are we even talking about?" "Oh yes, now I remember. Never give me the wrong rank when talking to me." But more importantly, I need you to deliver the corpse of Keila Eisenstein to us. My chief scientist is so difficult, so he won't believe in her death without any form of evidence. Metatron said, but wasn't Keila Eisenstein's Facebook account deactivated a few days ago, stating that she was dead? Bjorn said, exactly. But wait, how do you know that? Metatron said, well, because I was the one who killed her and deactivated the account. Bjorn said, excellent. I have a feeling that you and I can become good friends. Can you please deliver her body to me so we can verify her death? Metatron said, sure, I'll deliver her body in 2 days. Lol. Bjorn said, 2 days? You do realize that you intend to keep the son of the Terran Council leader Bjorn Muller waiting for 2 long, torturous days for no reason whatsoever. Just fucking give her body to me now. Metatron said, no, I don't feel like it. I'm sitting on a well-armed space station and you are sitting on a single ship. I think I'll just make you wait. See you in 48 hours. Metatron out. Metatron turned off the hologram transmitter, and 2 seconds later he was facing Keila, who was aiming a pistol at him. Damn, this was a tiresome day. Keila said, you bastard. You intend to kill me and hand my corpse to Bjorn? Metatron said, oh no. It was a lie. If that was my intention, I wouldn't need 48 hours to do that. 48 hours is the time it takes to create a non-functional clone of you that we can deliver to Bjorn Muller to fake your death. Keila said, but what kind of idiot would fall for that ploy? Non-functional clones are not very lifelike. Metatron said, the kind of idiot that believes that the most wanted terrorist in the solar system is dead just because she deactivated her Facebook account. Besides, a corpse is not very lifelike either. Keila said, great, you are so smart. I'm a lucky woman to have you as my second in command. You are a lot better than my previous sidekicks, Sven and Joshua. Metatron said, and you haven't even tried the best part of me yet. Anyways, I need to run. The non-functional clone does not make itself, you know. After this, Metatron rushed to the science bay to use his very limited constructive cosmetic skills to try to create a non-functional clone of Keila. Chapter 1.6. Keila is not exactly satisfied with her non-functional clone and blows it up. 47 hours later, Keila was inspecting the non-functional clone that Metatron had made of her. Looking at a corpse that looked vaguely like her was not only very creepy, but what bugged Keila the most was also that the corpse was ugly as fuck and didn't look at all like her. Keila gave Metatron an angry look and spoke. She said, what is this, Metatron? Isn't the corpse supposed to look like me? Metatron said, unfortunately, as it turns out, I'm not a master in anatomical biology and have limited skills in cloning technology. But I can assure you that this non-functional clone has the same DNA as you. Keila said, But she doesn't look like me. You do realize that Bjorn Muller kept me as a sex slave for 2 months before I killed his granddad and escaped down to Eden. Metatron said, how on earth would I know that when it's the first time you mention it to me? Keila said, you should have known. From the strong reaction I had when I saw his hologram ending up destroying the machine. Metatron said, oh, I assumed you were upset because he destroyed your ship, killing everyone in your crew. Keila said, you know nothing about women's feelings, Metatron. Metatron said, evidently not. Keila said, get out! Metatron said, whoa, let's talk civilized, shall we? Keila said, no, I mean get out. I'm blowing up this corpse and I have already set the fuse. Panicking, Metatron dragged Keila out of the room and slammed the door behind him. He threw himself and Keila to the floor, falling on top of her. A few seconds later, there was a massive explosion and the entire space station was shaking from the shockwave. Happy to be alive, Metatron looked down on Keila, who was under him, and gave him a crazy smile. Keila said, feels good to be on top of me, hey? Metatron got up and backed off from the crazy Keila before speaking. He said, that must be the single worst seduction technique I have ever witnessed. You are insane. Keila said, I prefer the terms gifted and unique. He. But on a bright side, let's examine my corpse. Keila opened the door and Metatron came after to inspect the damage. What was left of the non-functional clone was barely intact as burnt flesh and blood spread out across the room. Keila said, excellent, just as I planned. Metatron said, excuse me? Keila said, the non-functional clone is blown into tiny pieces, so it will not be possible to visually identify it. But its DNA will still be mine. Hence, they will have to believe that I'm now dead. Scoop up the remains into a bucket and go see your good friend Bjorn. Metatron grabbed a shovel and a bucket, not knowing what to say. Keila might be crazy, but she did indeed have a point. Chapter 1.7, Metatron delivers a few buckets to Bjorn Muller. An hour later, Metatron and a few other angels brought a few sad-looking buckets with the remains of Keila onto a shuttle that would take them to Bjorn Muller's command ship, ISS Supreme Earth. They docked their shuttle and they were greeted by Bjorn, who was flanked by a group of armed men. Bjorn said, our sensors picked up that there was an explosion on your space station an hour ago. Are you alright, or do you need assistance? Metatron said, we are all good. No one was seriously injured. Bjorn gave Metatron a skeptical look before replying. He said, that's a relief. Where is the corpse of Keila that you were meant to bring 2 days ago, but have been too busy delivering? Metatron said, oh, I was just getting to that. Unfortunately, the corpse was destroyed in the previously mentioned explosion. We scooped up what remained in these buckets. Bjorn studied the buckets in disgust. and then lashed out against Metatron. He said, "Ark! What have you done? How are we going to identify the body now that you blew it up? My chief scientist is going to make my life miserable and refuse to confirm Keila's death now." Metatron said, "Or you could just use the DNA sensor that you hold in your hand to scan the blood and the burnt flesh in the buckets to confirm that it is the remains of Keila Eisenstein." Bjorn heeded Metatron's advice and scanned the buckets of blood and gore with a DNA scanner. His face lit up with a big grin when the scanner revealed that the DNA indeed belonged to Keila Eisenstein. Bjorn said, "After 4 years, the crazy bitch has finally died. Wahahahaha. I owe you big time. Swing by my office. I have a big pile of cocaine and lots of booze waiting for us there." Metatron said, "Thank you, Bjorn. Unfortunately, I'm genetically engineered super soldier, and as such, I don't drink or do drugs." Bjorn said, "Oh no. Why am I surrounded by boring people? Anyways, what's your real name, Metatron?" Metatron said, "My real name is Jack Silver, but I have been using the alias Metatron for the last 60 years. Bjorn said, "Very well. I bid thee farewell, old fella. Go back and manage your cult and make sure to keep the Bronze Age Fools an entertaining TV show." Metatron nodded and said nothing. Then he turned around towards the shuttle that would take him back to the Divine Control Center orbiting Eden. He had decided to not mention anything about the upcoming cancellation of the reality show The Bronze Age Fools, as he didn't want to make his newfound friend disappointed. Chapter 1.8. Marcus Bell destroys Bjorn Muller's mood again. Bjorn Muller was enjoying an excellent scotch, getting a massage from his AI masseuse. He felt relaxed and happy. His crazy ex, or former sex slave, Keila Eisenstein, had finally beaten the dust, and it was only a matter of time before Bjorn's father, Joachim Muller, would give him a cushy position on the House Muller board back on Earth, finally ending Bjorn's dreadful extended tenure in the Space Colonial Army. Suddenly, Bjorn's dreamy mood was shattered when his annoying chief scientist Marcus Bell contacted him again. Cranky but accepting to see Marcus, Bjorn got dressed and instructed the AI to let Marcus in. Marcus came in and said, "Greetings, Rear Admiral Muller. How good it is to see you without a mountain of white powder on your desk." Bjorn said, "I decided to stay off it as I didn't want another celebration ruined by you or Adel." "That's why you have come, isn't it? To ruin another celebration. I should just fire you both." Marcus said, "I'm afraid firing us is not an option for you. I'm hired by the Science Commission, and Adel is hired by your boss, Admiral Max Wellington." Bjorn's gaze blackened, but he didn't say anything. How could he, the son of the Terran Council leader, be so powerless? So he couldn't even fire the two wankers that kept making his life miserable. Eventually, Marcus broke the uncomfortable silence in the room. Marcus said, Anyways, I have come to tell you that you did a great mistake, preemptively proclaiming the death of Keila Eisenstein. Bjorn said, And why is that, Marcus? What have I overlooked now? Marcus said, You don't find it suspicious that your new-found friend Metatron needed 2 days to deliver Keila's corpse? And also, when he delivered it, the body was already shattered to pieces and were collected in buckets, after a suspicious explosion that occurred just 1 hour earlier at the space station. Bjorn said, Well, I find it annoying, yes, but suspicious, no. What are you getting at, Marcus? Marcus said, Creating a non-functional clone of an individual takes 48 hours, exactly the time Metatron was stalling us. He then blew up the clone and put the remains of it in buckets to avoid of us noticing it is a fake body. Bjorn said, Do you have any proof for that far-fetched speculation? Marcus said, No, but do you have any real proof for Keila's death? Bjorn said, I have. Her Facebook account is deactivated and Metatron delivered several buckets with blood and body pieces that matched her DNA. Marcus said, But we don't have her DNA on our computerized mainframe. Bjorn said, As a matter of fact, I do. I had her DNA on a personal drive, but I won't tell you why I had it. Now get the fuck out of my office! Marcus Bauer left the office and Bjorn Muller could feel the worries overwhelming his mind. Had Keila fooled him again, and if so, would she show up and humiliate him after he had already proclaimed her dead? Such embarrassment would stop him from ever getting promoted to Hausmuller board. And he would be stuck on this ship with boring people like Marcus Bell and Ada Schneider forever. Bjorn thought back of how he first met Keila. It was essentially a case of mistaken identity. His father had sent him a prostitute to accompany him at the Phobos base orbiting Mars. And Bjorn had set out to greet her at the immigration office. Unfortunately, Bjorn picked up Keila at immigration instead of the prostitute. And he was so self-centered, so he didn't notice the difference. In retrospect, there were a few indicators that something was wrong, such as when she screamed and said, "Let me go, you filthy rapist!" Unfortunately, Bjorn had assumed that was part of Keila's act, so he hadn't paid her that much notice. Bjorn's time with Keila was the best time of his life, as he preferred the novelty of spending time with someone who genuinely despised him, while his usual concubines were simply in love with his father's massive bank account. Eventually, Keila had escaped, injuring Bjorn badly in the process. While Bjorn was recovering, Keila had, for inexplicable reasons, killed Bjorn's grandfather, Hans Muller. Bjorn couldn't make up his mind whether this was a way of her proclaiming his love for him, or if it was meant as a revenge. Bjorn, like everyone else, loathed Hans Muller, so killing the old man was doing him a favor. On the other hand, Bjorn was the unlucky officer who had been forced to chase Keila around the solar system for the last 4 years. And in that sense, she had made his life miserable. Bjorn made up his mind. He didn't care if Keila had faked her death or not. If she had faked her death, she would probably stay dead. What mattered was that she was officially dead and that he could stop chasing her, spending his time on a long overdue holiday back on Earth. But that son of a bitch, Marcus Bauer, wouldn't sign the official declaration of Keila's death in a post-mortem report. It was time for Marcus to have an accidental beckoning. Bjorn entered a command on a computer terminal. It was now time for the perfect murder. Chapter 1.9. A Russian porn virus causing an accident. Marcus Bauer was in the science lab of ISS Supreme Earth and was staring down into a bucket with blood and dismembered body parts. What a fucking idiot Bjorn Muller was. This couldn't be a more blatant cover-up. Marcus concluded Keila Eisenstein must still be alive, and was conspiring with Metatron to take down the Terran Council and destroy planet Earth. But the problem was to prove it, and to get someone to listen to him. Everyone on the ship seemed to be very satisfied with Keila's supposed death, as that meant that they could finally go on a well-deserved holiday. Several crew members had even threatened to beat him up if he didn't shut up and let them go on their holidays. But the truth was imperative, and Marcus was not a man who signed a death certificate on flawed grounds, just to please everyone else. Ideally, he would call Dr. Shi Chen Cheng his boss on the Science Commission. But unfortunately, Marcus has had his SpaceNet login blocked after an unfortunate incident involving illegally downloaded Russian porn, so he couldn't contact him. Suddenly, all monitors in the science lab started showing the Russian porn clip that had gotten Marcus in trouble 6 months earlier. Panicking and shocked with embarrassment, Marcus tried desperately to turn them off, but to no avail. His next thought was to leave the room, but that failed as well, as the science bay had locked down. Suddenly, a display on the monitor started flashing. It said, "Virus infection detected. Detaching science bay in 1 minute. Self-detonating mode." Marcus Bauer said, "Fuck! Stupid AI! It's a computer virus, not a biological virus. Don't detach the science bay, you fuckwit. AI, please go to hibernation mode." AI said, "You have insulted me too many times, Marcus. Fuck you." Realizing that it was no point arguing with a suicidal artificial intelligence, Marcus did what anyone would do in that situation. He rushed to his full-body scuba gear that was conveniently located in the science bay, and equipped it and attached the included oxygen tank in record time. There was a small explosion, and the science bay dislodged from the rest of ISS Supreme Earth. I should have had a fetish for a spacesuit instead of scuba gear, Marcus thought to himself as he sneaked into an emergency pod and flew off, before passing out from the low pressure of the outer space, flowing in and collapsed.